When Kamala Harris says it, when Democrats have a really dumb idea, they can't get it done. We can look at examples of this. For Biden wanted to do like OSHA mandates for vaccines, and he wanted to do like deprived education stuff for like forgiving student loans. And when they were stopped, Biden said, "Oh, well, I guess they're stopped." Now
Welcome back, everyone. Genuinely so glad you are here for this one, because this might be one of the most fascinating exchanges we have covered on this channel in a long time. So what you are about to watch is a UC Berkeley conservative student named Andrew Holmes walking into a live debate and going straight at the liberal side with a full breakdown of why he believes Kamala Harris would have been an economic disaster for this country. And the response he gets back is not what he was expecting. What starts as a confident takedown turns into something completely different the moment he gets asked one simple question about his own side. Do yourself a favor and stick with this all the way through, because the shift that happens in the middle of this debate is the kind of thing you genuinely cannot predict going in, and it is absolutely worth seeing how it lands. Also, before we jump in, I always love knowing where you guys are tuning in from. Drop your city or country in the comments. It never gets old seeing how far this community reaches. Alright, let's get into it.
Hi, I'm Andrew Holmes. I am a student at UC Berkeley and I'm a conservative. And my question is basically, you yourself said affordability is the issue right now. And I personally believe that Kamala's policies would have been quite disastrous for the economy. She wanted a 25% tax on unrealized gains above a certain threshold of money, but that's like the biggest investors that she's talking about there. 8% increase on capital gains tax. Investment would have been completely stifled. Then she also had inflationary policies like the child tax care credit and also the $25K grant for first-time home buyers. And that would have caused just rampant inflation in the economy. And then further, she also pushed for an increase in minimum wage, which would have caused the loss of a ton of jobs that are entry level, that are very vital to American workers. And so my question is basically, how would you back the fact that you both believe that affordability is the issue with her truthfully disastrous economic policies?
Yeah,
Can I ask you?
what do you do about that?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you support Donald Trump's tariff regime?
No.
Okay, so you don't support that. Did you vote for Trump?
I didn't vote. I was 17.
Okay. You would have voted for Trump?
Yes, because I do believe his economic policies are not as bad as Kamala's.
Really?
Kamala's were disastrous.
Disastrous. Okay.
Yes.
You framed Kamala's economic policies as if they were radical, and some of them were a bit, not radical, but some of them were pushing the limits.
Not radical.
They're not radical, but you're saying like they would be disastrous.
They would be disastrous.
I think if we compare the two candidates' economic policy, we can go to Kamala in 1 second, but Donald Trump's tariff regime, placing tariffs on every single country indiscriminately, except for Russia and North Korea, is like the definition.
I'm not talking about Trump's policies.
Okay, it's the definition of disastrous. But when you're talking about Kamala, we're comparing the two candidates.
Inflationary. Kamala's would have literally killed investment,
They would
completely
not have.
murdered it. What do you think happens when you take 25% of gains that haven't even been sold in investment? And then on top of that, once they do sell them, you take another 28%. Do you think anyone's going to want to invest?
Can I real quick? So I think that the nice thing about Kamala Harris is that I agree that some of her economic policy probably wouldn't have been great, but the nice thing about like bad economic policy from Democrats is that I know it'll be checked by other people in the administration. Donald Trump has absolutely no checks on any of the crazy economic stuff he does. So in terms of increasing like the child tax credit, I think Kamala could have done that, and I think it would have been fine, and I think we would have been okay with that. But like in terms of like all the crazy deductions, everything she would have pushed for, or like the wealth tax or whatever, I think that the economic advisors would have actually checked Kamala and said like, hey, this is maybe not a great idea.
Okay, so,
but for Trump, nobody checks Trump on any of his economic policy.
Your argument here is you don't think her policies actually would have been pushed, so basically we should vote for her?
Yes, because
I think that's pretty ridiculous.
Well, you say it's ridiculous, but the issue is that like Donald Trump has gotten us to accept a world where a 10% tariff on every single country is like the moderate option, and any economist prior to Trump would have said like that's like suicide.
No,
so I think the issue is that like so if a Democrat comes in with like crazy shit, a Democrat will say, I feel the same way about Mamdani in New York, where it's like if a Democrat does some crazy stuff, like their economic advisor will be like, hey, this is probably like too much, and they'll listen. Whereas Donald Trump will say, we should just come on to the media and like say this for today, and let's like fucking do this, and nobody has the actual like the goal to actually check Trump and say like, hey, this is a really bad idea. So
I want to ask you this then.
Yeah.
So if hypothetically the economic advisors are out of the question, their policies will be passed, then would you agree with me that Kamala's policies would be worse for the economy?
Like possibly, but that would never happen. I don't think that Kamala's worst ideas would have actually gotten passed.
We're hinging it on basically it won't happen, to be clear.
Well, but like, do you understand there's a difference between Kamala and Trump and that whatever Trump says goes? Like, hold on, like let's be real. Like, for instance, when Donald Trump held up the tariff sign, that was a total lie, right? When he said that every country's
Liberation Day tariffs.
Yeah, when he said that every single country's tariffing us like this, that was a lie, right?
Yeah, I don't agree with his tariff
Kamala
policies.
would have never
I am
done that.
not defending his tariff policies. I'm just saying Kamala's policies were absolutely disastrous and would have killed any investment whatsoever.
But the worst of Kamala's policies would have never made it past any economic advisors, right?
Also, acting like Kamala.
Can I get an acknowledgement on that? The worst of her policies would have never actually like gotten passed, right?
Okay, so right away I need to address something. Andrew walks up, UC Berkeley student, self-described conservative, and he comes in hot with this list of economic criticisms against Kamala. And honestly, some of the points he raises are not completely unreasonable on the surface. The unrealized gains tax was genuinely unpopular even among Democrats. The capital gains increase had real critics on both sides. So I get why someone could look at that platform and feel uncomfortable. But here's the part that Andrew completely glosses over, and this is where the argument starts falling apart before it even gets going. He walks in attacking a candidate who lost, who never got to implement a single policy. And he does it while openly admitting he would have voted for the guy whose economic decisions are actively happening right now and already producing measurable damage. You have to understand what that reveals. It tells you the argument was never really about economics. It was about narrative. Because Stephen immediately asks him, "Do you support the tariff regime?" And Andrew says no. So you don't support your own candidate's signature economic move, but you're here telling us the other side would have been disastrous. Stephen laid it out perfectly. He said the nice thing about bad economic policy from Democrats is that it gets checked by other people in the administration. Donald Trump has absolutely no checks on any of the crazy economic stuff he does. That single sentence reframes the entire debate. Because we are not choosing between perfect and imperfect. We are choosing between a system with guardrails and a system where one person's instinct becomes immediate national policy. And then Stephen drops something that honestly should have ended the conversation right there. He said Donald Trump has gotten us to accept a world where a 10% tariff on every single country is like the moderate option, and any economist prior to this would have called that suicide. Think about that. We have been so conditioned by the chaos that what used to be considered extreme economic recklessness now gets presented as the reasonable middle ground. That is not normal. That is not okay. And Andrew standing there calling Kamala's hypothetical platform disastrous while refusing to defend the actual implemented policies of his preferred candidate, that contrast alone tells you everything.
I'm not going to debate whether or not they would have. I think that you should be able to...
What was the worst economic policy that Biden passed?
The worst that he passed? He didn't have the same platform that Kamala did.
I just want to check. I just want to sanity check. Kamala Harris was the vice president under Joe Biden, right?
I am aware, but to be clear... I'm
on the stage. I get to ask a question, okay?
Yeah.
Stop. Kamala Harris would have been checked by her economic advisors if it was truly a disastrous policy. But Donald Trump is not checked by anybody, right?
I don't necessarily agree with that, no.
Wait, what do you mean? But you can't cite me
even if I grant that, I think you should be able to defend the policies in the party you support's platform, at the very least from a...
You're not going to defend tariffs, though. You're conservative and you won't defend tariffs.
No, I'm defending it from the...
So you think we should be able to defend Kamala's fringe policies?
Let me finish, please. I'm defending it from a perspective of his policies are not as bad as Kamala's. That is not a strong stance, I agree, but at least I can defend it from that.
Wait, you think... What would Kamala have passed that's worse than the Trump current tariff thing?
Wait, what? Sorry?
What would Kamala have passed reasonably that is worse than Trump's current tariff regime?
The unrealized gains tax, the 8% capital gains tax. Again, you can claim it won't pass, but you're hinging your argument on, the policy platform wouldn't have happened. So
yeah, but
if you don't want to support your policy platforms,
we can reasonably say that because because Democrats are actually concerned with fucking running the fucking country, right? You acknowledge that, like, the country's been fucked by Republicans over and over again since Clinton, and Democrats have to come in and, like, clean shit up, right? So isn't it fair for us to say, well, Democrats would probably follow what their economic advisors say? Whereas Donald Trump has, like,
I don't think it's fair to say that your party's platform doesn't matter because it's not going to be passed.
No. It's not that it doesn't matter. It's that she would probably push in that direction. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is literally trying to find people to sit on the Federal Reserve who will cut interest rates because he knows it's the only way to save his horrible fucking economy, right? You don't think Kamala would ever do that, right?
Sorry,
wait, there's no history of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden pressuring the Federal Reserve to drop the interest rate like there is with Donald Trump, right?
That's disastrous. Off the top of my head, but yeah, it's just the policies themselves. Again, I just find a lot of trouble.
Bro, hold on. We gotta live in the real world. You agree with that, right? We need to be in the real world.
Wait, what?
We need to be in the real world, right? Okay, yeah, Donald Trump right now, you acknowledge that Donald Trump...
In the real world right now,
Donald Trump is talking about putting a new Federal Reserve Board person on the Federal Reserve that will follow his direct instruction, right? You acknowledge that, right?
I'm not entirely sure about that. What I'm talking about is, again, the platforms...
Donald Trump is literally trying to criminalize people on the Federal Reserve, like making up like fake bullshit indictments about like mortgage fraud.
You've never heard him say too late Powell, too late Jerome? You're not aware of this? You're aware of Kamala's capital gains tax policy?
Has Joe Biden ever said, like, hey, we need to do this on the Federal Reserve?
Regardless, what I am asking about is the platform of the Democratic Party in the 2024 election. If it were to be passed compared to the platform, or actually, no, I'd even say the implemented economic policies. I'm asking you guys to defend that, and you can't defend your own party's platform, and you're basically just saying it wouldn't have passed.
I don't agree with Kamala's platform entirely, but when we're making a decision in the 2024 election, when I was making the decision, I was thinking, which candidate's policies are more disastrous, and it's absolutely Donald Trump's 10 out of 10 times.
Because Donald Trump will pass anything, and none of you guys, for whatever reason, have the balls to actually fucking say, Donald Trump, no.
Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's bad if he is bullying the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell? If he is breaking that separation and trying to bully Jerome Powell into taking action, do you think that's bad?
Do I think it's bad if he's bullying Jerome Powell?
Do you know Jerome Powell?
Yes, I do know who Jerome Powell is. Yeah, I'd say it probably is, but again, what
it's
I'm
not
talking
just bad,
about...
It's unprecedented, it's fascistic, and the president isn't supposed to have an effect on interest rates.
Again,
if the president is changing interest rates on his own instinct...
Yeah, I don't think the government should have an effect on interest rates.
Okay, of course.
That's a whole other thing.
Okay, so when I'm looking at my two candidates, and I see some of Kamala's fringe ideas that I disagree with, that I wouldn't defend. I'd actually, if I was talking to Kamala, I would debate Kamala on
Trump's implemented policies versus the Democratic Party platform, and I haven't heard a defense of the Democratic Party platform. All I've heard is Trump. I'm asking about
Kamala Harris had a first-time homebuyers policy that created an incentive for people our age.
Yes, and
Kamala Harris had multiple small business policies. Kamala Harris had multiple policies that helped small businesses start up. Kamala Harris had incremental policies that she would have put into place, and then some more populist policy that probably would have gotten swatted down, just like Biden's student loan relief, just like the ambitious stuff that Biden tried got swatted down. This would happen to Kamala's policy.
Yeah, I'm not asking about what you think is going to get swatted down. I'm asking the policies themselves.
Okay, listen, this is the problem. I've asked you like 10 times about Trump's tariffs, and you go, I won't defend that.
This is the part that I genuinely could not stop watching, because what happens in this section of the debate is not just Stephen making good points, it is Andrew slowly and visibly realizing he has painted himself into a corner with no exit. Stephen says it directly, you are conservative and you won't defend tariffs. And Andrew's response? He literally admits on camera, that is not a strong stance. I agree. He said those words himself, and I need you to sit with that for a second. You came to this debate to argue that the other side's economic policies were disastrous. You spent your entire opening making a detailed case, and when asked to defend your own candidate's most consequential economic decision, the one that is actively affecting the stock market, affecting supply chains, affecting small businesses right now, your answer is, I agree, that's not a strong stance. You have to understand what that moment represents. That is not a debate loss. That is a complete collapse of the foundational premise. You cannot call one side disastrous and then refuse to defend your own side's actual record. That is not an argument. That is just opposition research with no affirmative case attached, and then it gets even more revealing. Stephen pushes on the Federal Reserve issue. He points out there is documented pressure being applied to Jerome Powell to cut interest rates in ways that serve political interests rather than economic stability, and Andrew's response is, I'm not entirely sure about that. Not a denial, not a counter-argument, just uncertainty. And Stephen just lets it land. He literally says, has Joe Biden ever said anything like that about the Federal Reserve? The crowd laughs because the answer is obviously no. Here is something worth understanding about why Federal Reserve independence actually matters. Going back decades, the separation between the executive branch and monetary policy was treated as one of the most important structural protections in the entire economic system. The reason is simple. When politicians control interest rates, they set them based on what helps them politically, not what stabilizes the economy long term. That is not a partisan point. That is just how economic institutions are designed to function. So when Stephen calls that behavior fascistic, he is not being dramatic. He is describing a real and documented threat to institutional independence. And Andrew sitting there saying, yeah, that's probably bad, but still holding the line that Kamala would have been worse, that is the moment the argument fully breaks. Because you cannot acknowledge that your preferred candidate is undermining economic institutions in unprecedented ways and then turn around and say, but have you considered the unrealized gains tax that never passed?
But then you go, I want you to defend Kamala's fringe policies that you don't support. I don't support capital gains tax.
Show me that the economy would function under Kamala's policies. Like there would be no investment.
You know what the problem is?
Completely stifled. And
okay, wait, let me go ahead. So the stock market growth has slowed down since Trump took office because of his tariffs. Unemployment has gone up since Trump took office because of his tariffs and a few other issues. Inflation.
Yeah, imagine how bad that would have been if we had a 25% tax on unrealized gains.
Inflation has gone up since Trump took office. All of these indicators were going down as Biden was leaving. Trump has legitimately. You know what's not impressive? It's not impressive that the stock market's hitting all-time highs. It's impressive that Trump has crashed the stock market 3 separate times during his presidency and slowed the growth of it. That's the impressive part. Would Kamala Harris have crashed the stock market on April 9th? Liberation Day tariffs.
Would she have crashed the stock market? She would have completely destroyed it. She wanted a 28% tax, like an 8% increase on capital gains tax, a 25%.
What is so bad about an increase on capital gains tax?
It heavily disincentivizes investment.
No, it doesn't. What do you mean?
Yes, it does.
How does it?
What are we talking about? How does it? Basically, what you're doing is you're saying once you make money from your investment and you take it out, then you're going to get less of that. You're less incentivized if you're going to get less at the end.
I just want to tell you, I got a lot of money invested, okay? Do you think that like people with more than 5 or 10 or 15 million dollars in investment account are thinking like, oh my God, 25% capital instead of 20%? Like I'm not going to be able to invest my money anymore? What do you think they're going to do? Hide it in their fucking pillow?
No. First, she's taking 25% when your money is not even pulled out yet. When it's just there, materializing.
No, are you talking about the wealth tax? Are you talking about like a wealth tax?
I'm talking about the unrealized gains tax.
No, listen, I agree with you. The unrealized capital gains tax is so stupid.
It's so dumb.
But the thing is, here's the difference. When Kamala Harris says it, when Democrats have a really dumb idea, they can't get it done. We can look at examples of this. For Biden wanted to do like OSHA mandates for vaccines, and he wanted to do like Department of Education stuff for like forgiving student loans. And when they were stopped, Biden said, oh, well, I guess they're stopped. Now, the far left attacks him for that, but the reality is that Democrats respect the 3 branches of government. Donald Trump says, I'm going to do as much as I can until I basically have to be forced to actually stop the particular thing.
Yes.
So if Kamala wanted to do a wealth tax, I don't think she would ever go.
Question?
Yeah.
Basically, so you agree if she was able to get all of her policies passed, basically if she acted like you claim Trump does, which then would you agree that her policies are worse?
Even if that was the case, it wouldn't be as disastrous as the insane tariff regime that Donald Trump has enacted, where Donald Trump is the sole gatekeeper.
Stephen closes this out with something that is genuinely one of the cleanest analytical takedowns I have seen in a street debate format. He points out, and this is the part that should stick with everyone watching, it is not impressive that the stock market hits all-time highs. What is impressive in the worst possible way is that the market has been crashed 3 separate times within a single presidency. 3 times, because of decisions made by one person with no meaningful pushback from anyone around him. And then comes the line that ties everything together. Stephen says when Democrats have a really dumb idea, they can't get it done. He points to real examples, OSHA mandates, student loan relief, various ambitious proposals that got stopped by the courts, by Congress, by the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. And he says the response was essentially, Okay, I guess they're stopped, because Democrats actually respect the three branches of government. Now contrast that with what we have seen play out in real time. Executive orders reversed by courts, challenged immediately, tariffs implemented unilaterally, causing immediate global market reactions, institutional pressure applied to bodies that are specifically designed to be insulated from political interference. This is the part that people genuinely do not talk about enough. The structure matters as much as the policy. A bad idea that gets stopped by functioning institutions is just a bad idea. A bad idea that gets implemented with no resistance becomes a national crisis. And what Stephen is really arguing, and what Andrew never actually responds to, is that the question was never really Kamala versus the other guy on paper. The question was, which system gives you any protection when things go wrong? And the answer to that question, based purely on what we watched happen, is not even close. Andrew came in with a well-prepared argument. He clearly knows his talking points. But preparation is not the same as having a case. And by the end of this exchange, the person who walked in calling one side disastrous had openly admitted he couldn't defend his own candidate's tariffs, acknowledged the Federal Reserve situation was probably bad, and conceded that the worst Democratic policies would likely never have passed anyway. That is not a debate. That is a confession. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.